What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again from metaltrenches.com. As always, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, give us a like if you enjoy it, and consider supporting us over on Patreon. All of our links down in the description. But it is time for me to share 3 more recent albums that you don't want to miss. As it works out this week, we've got a bit of a kind of progressive theme going on. That's just the way it worked out, though each release kind of hails from sort of a different part of that spectrum. So let's check them out. Alright, first up we've got Australian progressive metalcore band Above Below with their new album, The Lotus Chapters. I'd recommend Above Below to fans of Periphery, Textures, and Unprocessed, particularly that last one. And I know this is going to sound kind of weird and maybe even put a few people off, but basically think musically like Periphery. Just instead of getting Spencer on vocals, you get like Brendan Urie of Panic at the Disco. Again, I know, like, I don't know how many people are into that, but I swear it works, and basically that's what these guys sound like. Having said that, don't let me fool you into thinking like this is some sort of like pop album or that it's really like sappy, and it's a pretty aggressive album. Like, there are some really intense tracks, actually, like Blood Wine and Beyond the Mosaic Garden, that rival tracks from the new Periphery album like Blood Eagle and Church Burners. So definitely those heavy, more genty points, kind of on par with Architects and again sort of Periphery riffs. And even if you aren't a Panic fan, I think that the clean singing's done really well, and it adds a unique layer to the music. It helps them stand out. And then when you combine that with kind of the drama of it all, because this album basically is sort of like a 3-act musical, more or less, you've got yourself a pretty engaging experience that I definitely think you don't want to miss. So great riffs, dynamic songwriting, varied vocal performance, all make The Lotus Chapters a really great album that you definitely want to check out. Alright, next up, changing to more of a progressive death metal sound, we've got Moscow-based band Horror God, which are sort of fusing that with also things like Deathspell Omega and Asoth with their third full-length Cursed Seeds via Lavadome Productions. I'd recommend Horror God to fans of Gorguts, Ulcerate, and Suffering Hour. And this is just one more. I keep saying that 2019 has been the year of reigning progressive death metal. They just keep churning out the hits with this Cursed Seeds album. The new Warforged, which is still probably my favorite of the year, at least in the top 3, and then you've got other albums from like Irreversible Mechanism and In Fury. It's even with how impressive those are, Horror God are just fully prepared to challenge for that title. Like, this is another one of my favorite albums of the year. I'm pretty sure it's going to end on my second half 2019 list. You've got these deep, bellowing growls and contorted guitars fusing with this very bleak atmosphere that really does sort of combine everything from Ulcerate and Horrendous to, again, more black metal projects like Deathspell Omega, and it just creates this glorious downward spiral into complete madness. Highly technical display of both the drumming and the guitars, and there's even, speaking of Gorguts, a guest solo from Kevin Hufnagel. It's a very appropriate inclusion because this album is clearly influenced by Gorguts and other bands of that ilk. But even if they didn't have that kind of star power, they do just fine on their own. Every track on here is highly consistent, very intense music. The vocals literally sound like they're just spewing from deep, like within the bowels, pools of bile just like pouring out and swarming insects like spraying from the throat. Like, that's the vibe I get from this thing. The drums are just so intense, and then the guitars have that sort of like slinking serpent-like quality where it's like coiling around and like choking the life out of you. So all I could say when I listened to this was, where the hell did these guys come from? Like, I am sad that I had never heard of them before, given that this is their third album, and I can't recommend it enough. I'm really excited to go back and actually listen to their back catalog now. And then last but not least, we've got the highly anticipated album from progressive mathcore, gents, sometimes death metal-y band Car Bomb. And they're following up that critically acclaimed 2016 album Meta with a new release called Mordial. I'd recommend Car Bomb to fans of, it's like Meshuggah plus 90s alternative and shoegaze. It's a very bizarre, unique mix. And again, like, I am all about bands that kind of do something that helps them stand out from just the massive just glut of music out there, and they definitely do that. It's like this totally Meshuggah-y, technical, groovy, heavy stuff going on, but then all of a sudden they'll like flip the switch and it's this very detached like mescaline trip that totally brings me back to days listening to 90s alternative radio. Even the likes of like Sonic Youth kept popping into my head when I was listening to those parts. And they can be a little bit hit and miss. The first track in particular I have some qualms with, but overall I really like what they're doing, and I'm interested to see how they further play with this sound. The heavier parts also kind of remind me of Frontier at times, with this sort of chug chug pew pew kind of thing going on, like a lot of like almost video game sounding like laser gun sound effects coming out of the guitars in those parts. So that definitely is awesome. Vocals go everywhere from sort of Jens Kidman to Mike Patton's work on Irony is a Dead Scene, but then again the more sort of 90s grungy, shoegazy, wispy, haunting, reverb-laden singing as well. Felt at times that I was sort of like drifting on this cumulus cloud, but there's still just this sense that things are like not right, things are sort of off. It's like you're on like a drug trip, but you're using that to sort of escape problems, and they keep sort of slipping into the back of your mind and you're trying to ignore them. And then all of a sudden, as soon as that like really takes hold, you have that new sort of genty, just like panic attack of like kicking in again. Car Bomb are just a one-of-a-kind entity. If you aren't aware of them, you definitely need to familiarize yourself with them. They're a band in general, not just this album, but overall, you do not want to be missing out on. And that'll do it for this recommendation roundup. If you enjoyed any of the bands that you listen to on here, I've got links to the full reviews and also the streams down in the description. So a lot of them are pretty cheap. You can get them digitally, you can get various physical formats, and they're totally worth it. As you can see behind me, I'm always trying to advance my collection and just sort of support the scene on the financial side in addition to what I'm doing here. But that said, again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Share it with others. You can follow us on your choice of social media. And once more, if you keep coming back, you feel like you're getting added value from these videos, please do consider contributing to our Subscribe Star or our Patreon. And again, links for all of that stuff down in the description. But I think that's enough for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.